Do we need to overexpose the Sony footage?
Alright. I've been shooting with the Sony cameras, FX6, FX3 for the past few years. The FX6 has been probably my most used camera and my most asked for camera by producers, especially the past 2 years. I've heard people talk about overexposing a little bit with the Sony cameras. I've never really done it. I kind of just, expose correctly, do what looks good on false color, looks good in the monitor, and that's mostly worked. But over the past couple years, especially this past year, using the camera so much, I started on a couple projects to notice some grain in my footage. One of them I didn't notice in my small monitor. It was not until after the shoot that I noticed it. The other one we noticed on set, but again, it was on a bigger monitor. So a lot of times I think I'm getting some grain in my footage that I don't really notice on my small 5-inch monitor. So for the benefit of myself and for anyone else that uses these cameras, I've done an exposure test video. I set up a simple 1-camera interview for the test with the FX6. An interview style is so much of what I shoot, and anyone watching this probably, you shoot a lot of like talking heads interviews, doc kind of stuff, or corporate. For the purpose of this test, I only had one key light on our subject, Brendan. Thank you, Brendan. We didn't light the background. We didn't do, ideally we would have more control and more light. But for this test, we have one sort of soft key light, and the background, the windows, the background, they're kind of just, they fall where they fall. But this is the test that we did. We set our key light to correct exposure, what I'm calling correct exposure, like how I would expose this interview. I set our camera at what looks decent for the background, to where it's bright enough, not too bright, and tried to keep the windows from blowing out. And then I set our key light to make his skin around 50 to 60 IRE on false color. So I set the camera there, and then I tested 2 stops darker in camera and 1 stop darker, and then 1 stop and 2 stops brighter in camera. And I did this test at both native ISOs, so 800 and 12,800. So the main thing I was looking for in this test footage is grain in the shadows. That's been the biggest thing that I've seen on these cameras, that if you underexpose too much, you're kind of losing usability of that footage. So what I did was I brought the footage into post, and I brought up the darker footage to pretty much match the quote correct exposure, and then I brought down the overexposed footage to match. And here's what we got. This first one is correct exposure at 800 ISO. It looks pretty clean. You can see if you zoom in, you can see a little bit of noise in the shadows, but it's definitely usable, definitely a nice image. It looks pretty good overall. If we go to 1 stop underexposed, we're seeing a bit more grain coming in the shadows. And then 2 stops darker, we're seeing a good amount of grain coming in the shadows. The shadow side of his face and the wall behind him, we're starting to notice some decently heavy noise. And then the 1 stop brighter brought down, even compared to the correct exposure, it looks a little cleaner in the shadows to me. And then 2 stops brighter, and my biggest worry with shooting 2 stops brighter was these windows. But when we bring it down, we see that they're actually not blown out, and the shadows look much cleaner to me. And then with our 12,800 ISO testing, all these things were exaggerated. All these results were like the same results, but exaggerated. So the 12,800 ISO footage is not as clean as the 800. It is much cleaner than putting the low base ISO higher, but the higher ISO footage is not as clean as the lower. So that's a big thing that I noticed that I had sort of noticed before but never tested, so it's good to know it. This footage 2 stops under is pretty unusable. I don't think it can be brought up, and I don't know if noise reduction could handle that. It's pretty gross. 1 stop under is also pretty gross, maybe usable, but you really have no room. You really have no room on the underexposed footage to bring it up. As soon as you start to bring it up, the shadows pretty much get destroyed. So the correct exposure at the 12,800 still looks pretty noisy to me. Again, the 1 stop and the 2 stops brighter are much cleaner, and even the 2 stops brighter brought down, the windows are not blown out, that information's still there, and there's just way more information in the shadows. So it looks like, to me, overall a much cleaner image. So here's my result, what I'm thinking. I have been for a few months overexposing this footage by about a stop, and I'm really happy with it. I feel it's a much cleaner image. I feel like the tests show it's a much cleaner image, but I want to hear from you if any of you guys watching have a different experience than me, or if there's something I'm missing, if there's some reason that overexposing a little bit is in another way negative for the image that I'm not noticing, please tell me, let me know, because I'm trying to learn and be as good as I can with this camera, because I just use it a lot and I want to get the best image out of it that I can. So let me know what you think. Let me know just your experiences, your thoughts, whatever. So that has been my testing. This was super helpful for me to test this footage and really work with it. Let me know, again, if you have thoughts, if I left anything out, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.